This is I'm going to say this is an ideal flow. And the reason I say ideal is sometimes we get, well, let me just start with it instead of wandering off. So we get a call for proposals, meaning we ask the community, usually Astro, APM, we invite people to tell us what are the problems they're having. And then we take a look at those and flesh those out so we understand them. And the planning committee will look at that and try to pick the ones that they think are the most pertinent, the most impactful. And then we work with the technical committee to see if it's already covered in a profile or if another profile can be extended to include it, or if when we look at it, it's really a one-off case or a special case that doesn't have wide applicability. And there's some other criteria we use that I'll actually talk about in just a minute. So we gather this information, select the use cases, vote on which ones we think are the most important, and then it moves over to the technical committee for implementation. And they're the ones that work very hard at figuring out the details. Once we think we have it right, they'll be published for public comment. Changes may or may not be made. Often many changes are made after the public comment. It goes to a trial implementation. Once that's finished and we're satisfied things are looking good, it'll get published and be available for testing at IHE Connectathons. And also we can demonstrate at APM and Astro. And then one of the key elements again is that the vendors then need to take these profiles and actually implement them in their software. So if you look at this, it has months 1 to 5, 6 to 13, 14 to 18. That is kind of ideal. Sometimes things take longer. Sometimes we start on a profile and then one of the key champions, who is one of the drivers or the driver, is not available to work on it for a while, so it may stall, or we may find that another use case has arisen that's much more important than one we were working on, so we table one for a while. Here's a little more detail on it. We get idea submissions from IHERO members, the radiation oncology community. We do draft use cases on this, like I said, and impact statements to say why we think it's useful and what we think it's going to do for people in the clinic. And as I mentioned, we rank it in terms of importance. Technical committee will then take a look at it again and see, does it make sense to try to tackle this? And part of that decision is, are there technical issues in implementation? Or if we go with what somebody's asking for, is that going to be too specific to one vendor? We do need to look at practicality and the chance of this being adopted by the vendors as well. We do like, if we can, to have a champion from a vendor. They'll be the ones to do most of the drafting. There's a lot of work that happens offline, but there's week-long meetings where the technical committee will grind through this and work through this stuff, work this out. And as I said, in IHERO, we do not write standards, we merely refine them. But what's the likely outcome is we will often send some requests back to the DICOM Working Group 7 that deals with radiation therapy and ask for changes to the standard if we think those would be useful and important and helpful. What is kind of nice is that most of the people involved in IHE are or have been at one time also involved in DICOM, so there's a very good synergy between those two groups. And as I mentioned before, public comment phase, implementation, and then it's available for testing. And then eventually we will deprecate some of these profiles. This is an example of a clinical impact statement. It's for the Advanced Radiation Therapy Interoperability, ARTI objects. And again, it is simply trying to explain why we think there's a need and what we think it's going to do in the clinic. But again, this is reviewed and this is by both groups, and this is something that we use to help us decide priority, because impact is also another important factor in this. Now I have something here I call realities. Excuse me. We do base profiles on clinical use cases. We do, again, weight it. We do try to figure out what's most clinical. We do try to figure out what's realistic to be addressed. Esoteric solutions aren't very good. Extremely difficult implementations aren't all that exciting for us, because we know if it's a very difficult implementation, adoption is going to be rough. On the very bottom, I have a statement here that the clinical user is key to driving profile development, and that is something I keep coming back to. You hear me emphasize in this talk, but you would hear me emphasize this in real life as well, is that we really want to solve widespread, really real-world issues, real-world problems. We want to work on things that are important to people, that are going to improve the safety, effectiveness, efficiency. And that's why getting people involved, other than the people who are the core committees, is something that I think is absolutely critical in order to get everything right and to get the correct focus. As far as profiles, when we talk about, there are content profiles that talk about when we send an object, what does it contain? When we send under ARTI, when you send a certain type of beam, what are all the DICOM tags that we sent, and what do we need to do with them? There's also workflow profiles that talk about actions that happen in what order, and then at what stage is, signals should be put to say we're at this stage, we're at this stage, we're at this stage. I'm going to I'll show you the profiles. Here's a couple of examples. Here's one that's basic RT planning. This dates way back to 2007. And in this, we've identified a contour, and that would be what you expect to be. It's the actor that you use in order to draw contours. A geometric planner, which is close to virtual sim. Dosimetric planner, which would involve calculation of the dose, and a dose displayer. And you can see the arrows that indicate what goes to and from the RT archive. So the archive's another actor we've identified in this. These were very basic. They've been refined over the years, though, so they're a little more complex to move along with what's happening in the field currently. We do also have multimodality registration 3. That implies there was a 1 and a 2, and there most definitely were. So this is rigid registration. It's not deformable. And then we've identified actors here as the thing that creates the registrations, the thing that allows you to contour with registered images, the thing that displays the contours, and then the thing that displays the dose in an archive. And we have things assigned to each one of these. And again, for details on all these, you can go to the wikis and link to the documents and get all the details. One more I was going to talk about is ARTI. It goes back to 2009. But that's when we took the basic planning profile I showed before and expanded it to different beam types. And you can see all the different beam types listed there. And we have 2 actors for these. One's a producer, meaning you create this and send it. And the other one is that you take it and you read it in. And I'll mention this a little further when we get to go to talk about the Connectathon, to show you what level of detail we go to on this. Currently, we have 9 active profiles. We have 12 in development, and there's other use cases that aren't really active. They're identified. That is the link if you wanted to see all of these. And the next slide, shows a picture of where we are with these things. We love our acronyms. So, and the next few slides will explain these, so when you look at these slides later, you know what all these are. And as it says there, the red ones are retired, they're no longer in use. Green, they're completed, they're active. The black ones in public comment. The light blue are in process of development. And purple, we've identified those, but we're not currently working on those. And you can see the timeline. We go way back when the BRTO, the Basic Radiation Therapy Object, started in 2005. And yes, you can see there's some things that were in 2017 and 2018 as well. So we are not sitting still. These are the retired profiles. I'm not going to dwell very long on these slides, but I just want to show that we have I've listed these out for you so you can see at least what the names are. If you want to know what these details are, you can go to the web links and see all the details for all these profiles. These are the ones that are in development right now. A couple more that were identified.